Hello everybody and welcome to another episode. In today's episode I'm going to show you how to properly remove and replace the rear shock absorbers and also the rear springs from any Audi A6 C7 out there. So right here on the ground I have the brand new parts which I'm going to install on this kind of vehicle. The manufacturer for the shock absorbers is AUDI. This in my opinion is the best manufacturer out there which you can buy for a vehicle. It is not the OEM parts, and also the rear springs are made by KIB. This is also a very good manufacturer, is not very expensive and is doing the job just fine. So without any further ado, the first thing which you have to do is to lift the vehicle and place it on a jack stand. After that you have to remove the rear wheel and you can start working on the car and remove the parts which you have to remove and replace. Okay guys, so right here as you can see, the rear shock absorber from this kind of vehicle is completely shocked. It has a lot of oil dripping from it, and because of that this one is no longer usable and I have to replace it right away. Always, if you encounter any problems with any shock absorber or with any spring, it doesn't matter if it is on the front side or on the rear side, you'll have to replace the complete set. You'll have to replace both of them from the left and from the right, just to make sure that it will work perfectly and the car will behave like it should behave. So on this vehicle, to remove the rear shock absorbers, you'll have to remove the two bolts from the top, which are very easy to access, and after that right here at the bottom you'll have a longer bolt which is securing the shock absorber at the bottom part. After that you can just pull it out from the vehicle and replace it with a brand new one. In my case, I'm also going to replace this rear spring, and to remove it you'll have to compress the suspension, you'll have to lift it up, you'll have to tighten the rear spring with something and hold it into the compressed size, so into the smaller size, and after that, after you lower the suspension, the spring can be removed out very easy. I just recommend you all to be very careful because the springs are very dangerous. If you don't tag them or secure them properly, they can fly off into your face, into the vehicle or something like that, and they can create very much damage. Very good everybody, so as you can see, into the bottom part the bolt came out pretty easy. The shock absorber is disconnected from the rear suspension part. And now I can go ahead, I can remove the two bolts from the top and the shock absorber can be pulled out from the vehicle very easy and very fast. To remove the two bolts from the top, you'll have to use a 16mm socket. And to remove the bolt from the bottom, you'll have to use a 21mm socket. Okay guys, so right here on the ground I have the brand new shock absorber which I'm preparing to install back over the vehicle, and I have the old shock absorber which I just removed out from the vehicle. Before trying to install the new one, I recommend you all to compress the piston from the shock absorber a few times until it will build up some pressure, and only then you can go ahead and install it back over the vehicle. Right here, the one thing which I have to do is to remove the top flanges from the old shock absorber. I'll have to remove the nut and remove it completely from the old shock absorber, and I'll have to transfer it to the new one. To do so, you'll have to remove this bolt from right here. You'll have one bolt at the top, which you have to remove with a 16mm socket. In my case, on the old one, I'm going to use the impact gun, but on the new one, never use impact guns. You'll have to use only some manual tools to hold the piston from not moving, and one tool to tighten the bolt over the piston. Okay guys, so from here you'll have to take the brand new anti-dust protection, you'll have to put it into the top flanges from the shock absorber, you'll have to make sure that it's fully secured inside, and then you can go ahead and install it back over the brand new shock absorber and tighten it to spec. In my case, everything is prepared. I'm going to put it back over the brand new shock absorber, I'm going to tighten it, and then I'm going to install it back over the vehicle. But before, I will try to replace the rear spring, and then I'm going to install back the brand new shock absorber onto the vehicle. To put it back over the brand new shock absorber, you will only have to slide it over the piston from the shock absorber, and then you can just tighten it to spec. So if you want to tie it correctly, the nut from the shock absorber over the top flanges, you'll have to use a 16mm key like this, and you'll have to use also a tool like this one to hold the piston from the shock absorber to not spin around with the bolt in the same time. So normally you'll have to counter hold it, you'll have to tighten the bolt or the nut, and you'll have to hold the piston from not moving when you try to do it like this. Make sure to don't damage the piston, make sure to don't catch it with some pliers or something like that if it is brand new, because you don't want to damage it and lose any pressure from inside it. And right here, from this moment, everything is tightened and fully secured to spec. From here, I'm ready to install it back over the vehicle. I always like to spray some copper paste right here over the bolt and over the piston, just to make sure that in the future it will not get rusted or something like that. And from here, you'll have to put the cap over it, and the shock absorber is ready to be installed back over the vehicle. Right here in my hand, I also removed the plastic part from the old shock absorber, and I want to transfer it to the new one, because in this way everything will be complete, everything will be similar to the old shock absorber. And from what I can see, the old shock absorber was the original one, and I want to make sure that this one will behave like the original one also. So moving on with the job, right here, the brand new spring is already fitted back into the rear suspension part. And in my case, the way I did it was to disconnect the sway bar link from the sway bar. I also disconnect the rear caliper completely, just to give me more space and room to work right here in this area, because it can be very tight right here. And I lifted up the suspension from the rear side completely up with the jack stand, and then I secured the old spring with some wiring, with some I'm not sure how to call this, with anything we have in the garage. You can tighten it as much as you can, just to make sure that it will secure it compressed. And in this way, after you lower the suspension, you will be able to remove it very easy with your hand. Just make sure to secure it properly, because like I said earlier, those springs and any spring from any vehicle can be very dangerous. If you don't secure it completely, it can fall out and it can hit you very hard, or it can create any damage to you and to your surroundings. So just make sure to be very careful when you do it like this one. In my case, as you can see, now I fully compressed it up into the top position. Now I'm able to cut these ropes completely. And as you can see, it will still create some tension. It will still release some tension very hard, but because the rear suspension part is fully compressed into the top position, now I'm able to remove it very easy. I'm able to remove the ropes, everything I tightened the spring with, and now I can just lower the rear suspension, and the spring is ready to go back on the road, because it's completely installed very good and very easy. From this moment, I can go ahead, I can install back the caliper, the sway bar to the sway bar link, and now I can install back the brand new shock absorber over the vehicle. To correctly install the brand new shock absorber into the vehicle, you'll have to compress it completely while you are trying to install it back, because normally it will not fit into the rear suspension part, but if you compress it completely, you'll make some room, and in this way it will enter into the wheel arch area, and in this way you'll be able to install it and tighten it to spec over the vehicle. Alright everybody, so as also the rear shock absorber and the rear spring are installed perfectly and correctly over the vehicle. Everything is installed and tightened to spec. And from here, those were all the things and all the steps which you have to do if you want to completely replace the rear shock absorbers or the rear springs from any Audi A6 C7 out there. In my case, this vehicle is not a quattro one, it's only a front wheel drive vehicle. So if you have a vehicle like this one, this video is for you. Thank you all for watching. If you like the video and found it informative, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, give me a comment and a like down below. See you next time.